been an avid DIYer for the last 17 years, trying to save money everywhere I can, and I recently learned a crazy lesson that has completely blown my mind. Sometimes it's more expensive to do things yourself, and that's the lesson we learned when building our dream workshop. There were a lot of things that were just over our head, and it was actually cheaper to hire professionals who knew what they were doing, and it was faster, and it was better, and it was actually a lot of fun because I brought my camera along to document all the cool lessons and tips and tricks that I learned by watching pros do their thing. Oh, I'm out of breath. What else was I gonna say? In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly what it took to get from an empty metal building shell to this, what it cost, the mistakes we made along the way, and what you would probably wanna do differently if you ever did something like this. Now, this is part of an epic multi-video dream shop build series, so I'm gonna drop you in right at the part where we left off in the last video. And a special thanks to Mr. Cool for sponsoring this video. While Big Jose and Little Jose worked on installing our doors and finishing the trim and gutters, I had an intrusive thought. I don't know anything about electrical work. I've never wired anything in my life. I bet I could figure it out and do it myself, save some money. It can't be that hard, right? Now that was my thinking right before Duresta hit me with the truth.
Drew, you idiot. You go to school on the first one. Don't you know that?
Now, I'm sure it would make for an entertaining video for you to see me struggle through learning electrical work in real time on the YouTubes. It would be a disaster. Chum in the water for trolls like Stan in Iowa. My sincerest apologies to Stan and all my haters. I've made the difficult decision to pay professional electricians $11,402.78. You're going to have to comment about something else. Maybe say something like, "Oh, it must be nice having all that YouTube money," or something like that. Like and subscribe. Now, I've done a lot of DIY stuff over the years, and you know what? It always takes so much time and so many trips to the orange store and so many mistakes and cuss words. And so with that as a reference point, it amazed me that these pros wired everything up in one day. Watching the pros do their thing with speed and competency is more satisfying than buying another clamp that I don't really need. It was the strangest thing. They're so fast, they're so good, they're not afraid of ladders. It's like they've done this before. But it had to be awkward for them having me standing in the room holding a camera like Mr. Milchick auditing their every move. If you think that looks like a lot of power, you're right. It's 320 amps, 3 times what the plan was. Here's what happened. The initial plan was to run a 100 amp sub panel from our house to the shop. However, we discovered that our home's existing service couldn't handle the additional load. To make it work, we'd need to upgrade our house panel from 200 amps to 300 amps, which also meant that the electric company would have to replace the lines from the street to supply the extra capacity. Only after that could we install the 100 amp sub panel in the shop. Now guess how much that was going to cost? I'd say I hope you're sitting down, but we both know you're already sitting on the toilet, so I'll just say don't fall in. It was going to cost $20,000 just to upgrade our house panel to give us 100 amps at the shop because of the new lines that would need to be run underneath our house all the way to the other acreage that we have. So like a dummy, I asked, well, how much more to just install another transformer at the road and run a separate service? Don't fall in. $13,000 more. Okay, you can stop your typing. No, I'm kidding. It was just $13,000, not $13,000 more. So it cost $7,000 less to just run 320 amps directly to the shop than to upgrade our current panel so we could drop 100 amps. Sometimes things just don't make sense. Now, every time I think of the non-budgeted $13,000 transformer with a massive wire, I just tell myself, I'll have this memory of the supervisor being close to the excavator for the rest of his life for those 30 minutes. At least that's what I tell myself and my wife. He's having so much fun, and it's cheaper than Disney World these days. Now, in case you're wondering, that green transformer alone, just the box, cost $6,500, and the rest was for the wire that they had to run, the subcontractors, all that. It's ridiculous. Why is electricity so expensive? We have a lot more work to do until we can move into the shop. Please enjoy each part equally. Does working in a metal building in July in Texas sound like a fun time to you? Yeah, me neither. But one of the goals for building this shop was to create a space where I could work any day out of the year, no matter the weather. So that meant we needed a strong insulation game. Now, a lot of people hear foam insulation and immediately think that sounds expensive. Yeah, it is. But you might be shocked to hear that fiberglass in a shop like this is actually more expensive. Now, the material cost might be cheaper, but the labor cost and the extra welding cost is where you take the hit. If we went the fiberglass route, we'd have to install more horizontal purlin supports in the ceiling to hold the fiberglass against the roof. We're talking extra labor, extra materials, extra time, extra everything. And for what? An insulation method that's about as effective as using a screen door on a submarine? Now, maybe that's an exaggeration, I'll give you that, but you get the point. In our case, closed cell foam was the best solution. I didn't understand the difference between open cell and closed cell foam until I saw this horrific video a few months back by Matt Risinger, I don't know how to say his name. He was talking about a bunch of houses in the UK that installed open cell foam insulation on the underside of the roof deck. The problem is that many roof decks over there don't have a vapor barrier due to the building sciences of the time. Now, what do you think happens to open cell foam when it comes into contact with moist air on the underside of a roof? Well, it's a sponge, in case you didn't know, and that can lead to timber decay and a ton of other health issues. It's so bad there are mortgage companies and insurance companies in the UK who refuse to give loans or insure homes that have open cell foam. Now, to be fair to open cell, our last house had open cell foam and it was amazing, but the house was built with it in mind and had a moisture barrier and all of those things. But apparently for metal buildings, closed cell foam is the way to go because it does double duty. It insulates and, more importantly, acts as a vapor barrier since the metal building doesn't have one. It has a higher R value than open cell 2. Now, from what I can tell, and this is basically the standard go-to insulation for a metal shop, keeping everything dry, temperature controlled, and my favorite, bug-free. But we both know the Texas scorpions are gonna somehow find their way inside my shop, rent-free of course. Now, these guys' prep work was something else. I've seen some sloppy insulation jobs before, but watching them meticulously cover every single window and floor surface was like watching a surgical team prep for an operation. They didn't want a single drop of foam anywhere it shouldn't be, and there was no way I was gonna do this prep work. Now watch these guys work. They're basically painting the inside of my building an off-white, except instead of paint, it's magical expanding foam that goes into every crevice and saves me money and energy cost and keeps this place tighter than my wallet after buying all that dirt. It was super fun to show the applicator the time lapses of his work and show him how consistent he was. I think he enjoyed my enjoyment and was a little surprised at how much I was complimenting their work and how impressed I was. We had the same crew do the painting immediately after the foam, which turned out to be a smart move because it saved us time and money. No double prep, no extra cleanup, just efficient workflow. They prepped the site and started foaming on Monday, and by Wednesday, they were painting, and after 3 full coats of paint, they were packed up by Friday afternoon. Now, most people will probably want to go with white for their ceiling, but this is a YouTube video studio first, and I'm all about controlling my lighting. Black ceiling means no light bounce, no distractions, and it's like creating a giant photography studio box. And most people will think I'm crazy, but one of my first jobs when I was 17 was working for the lighting designer for this little upstart magician named David Copperfield, and he taught me most of what I know about lighting. And that's one reason why a lot of my traditional YouTube videos have this dark, moody lighting feel to them. Yes, I know how he made the Statue of Liberty disappear, and no, I won't tell you. The stage revolved. And it was 1983. It's kind of easy to fool people on TV. The supervisor would have loved to have overseen this project, and I think he would have lost his mind watching this process of it expanding into the world's largest marshmallow, but fumes are no joke. And the safety police will be happy to know I used respiratory and eye protection while filming in here. However, I won't give you the exact model of the mask I used because it probably won't be enough for you. The total bill came in at $14,000. Yeah, I know. But when you break down the foam insulation, the prep work, the 3 coats of paint, it's actually not as bad as it sounds, and I didn't have to do any of it. Before the electricians could come back and do their final work, I needed to tackle 2 major construction projects. Well, they're not major, but they involve construction lumber and some things I've never done before. First, I had to create a bathroom. I'd never built a stud wall before, but I've watched a lot of This Old House. And after going down the whole how to make a 2x4 stud wall rabbit hole on YouTube, and after getting a new cordless framing nailer, because, you know, all the framing I do on this channel, we had ourselves a bathroom. Now, I've been in other shops where they just build the small box in the corner and cover it with OSB, and it kind of looks like trash and like it doesn't fit and like no one thought through it. So I made my bathroom with an unreasonable amount of ceiling height because I have issues and I like nice things. While I was pretending to be a carpenter, I had a cool idea for a ceiling that I saw at a store in Epcot. I also eat an illegal amount of Chipotle each week, and I've been staring at these exposed wooden rafter ceilings that they have for a long time, and I kind of like that look. So for my secret office at the back of the shop, I came up with this idea to build wooden rafters 12 feet in the air. To make it easier on ourselves, we figured out we could just make the grid in sections built on 16-inch centers, and then essentially we had pre-made ceiling modules. And then we did the wonderful work of lifting them up 12 feet in the air on scaffolding and installing them without falling down or getting hurt. In an upcoming video, I'm going to detail out this office build in the world's coolest shop bathroom. But for now, I just wanted to give you a little context of what this was, because you'll see it in the background of the video and wonder why I skipped over it. Now, you'll get a kick out of this. While we were installing my dumb ceiling idea, the garage door company showed up, and I had to get footage of them installing the 12-foot door. Now, tell me the truth. If you were me and you saw someone standing on top of a 12-foot wall that you just made for the first time after learning framing on YouTube, would you mention it to them? Now, Stan and I was gonna point out that I'm probably a bad person for videoing it instead of warning them, and he's not wrong. All right, the day has finally come that I've been waiting for about a year, and that is where we can see our fixtures put in place, our lights, our fans, all that stuff. This was a fun day. To start to see some of the final fixtures going into my dream shop is truly satisfying. I searched forever to find these linear LED lights for my office that I've seen in other places, and I've been dying to see how powerful and quiet these big ass fans are. And then we ran into an issue with these super slick exterior sconces. I was a stickler about getting the window spacing just right, which came with a minor complication that I didn't foresee. Because of the raised profile of our exterior panels, mounting the lights in the exact center of each window seemed impossible because of the ridge. To give me a weird look when I insisted they put the wires in the precise center, and we had some strongly worded exchanges, some robust dialogue, and then I reminded them who was paying the bill, and I asked them to trust me. What they didn't know was that while I might know nothing about electricity, I do know how to draw and how to 3D print. And here's where it gets really interesting. I traced the profile of the panel on a piece of paper, and using the trace frame from Shaper, I quickly digitized the profile with my phone. I then sent that to my product designer Seth with a challenge. I bet you can't design me a custom mount for my sconces, and he totally took the bait. Well, Seth modeled the panel in Fusion, and I provided measurements for exactly where I wanted the center of the lights to be in relation to the raised ridge on the panel, and then with a bit of playful manipulation, I suggested that it was a shame that he didn't know how to place his sconce base model in the 3D space against my measurements. I'm falling right into my trap. I received 5 different STL files with varying profiles, complete with labels, and a product designer who was convinced he had outwitted the boss using ABS with glass fiber reinforcements. I quickly printed these custom mounting boxes on my super secret 3D printer that I've been testing for Bamboo. And voila, look at that. Now, while it was nice to have the pros do their thing and save me a bunch of DIY headaches, it was also nice to do my thing and show off the competencies that I use every day in my business. And the look on the electrician's face and our general contractor's face when they saw that these were perfectly installed right in the middle where I wanted them, regardless of the panel profile, is actually pretty satisfying. I mean, I've been giving these pros their props this entire time, and it was nice for them to look back at me and give me the slow clap. I mean, they didn't slow clap me, but in my head, they totally slow clapped. I've been running my business from home for the last 4 years, and I've completely taken over our house. A 3-car garage is my workshop and studio. I converted a spare bedroom into my office, and I somehow managed to squeeze 10 3D printers between our laundry room and master bedroom closet. How I'm still married is a mystery, I know. Now, working from home with kids means I have desperately needed to separate my work from home life. And I always feel like I'm at work and that I'm never at home. And anyone who works from home while having small children understands this struggle. It's the main driver behind this $200,000 severance procedure. Being in Texas presented another challenge. It's brutally hot from May to October, making my garage workshop basically unbearable during summer months, even with insulation. So last year I did what any YouTuber would do. I sent a random email to Big Ass Fans with a modest proposal. I asked if they'd consider sponsoring a C-tier YouTuber with their smallest, most affordable shop fan. And I expected no response and was shocked when they replied the next day. They reviewed my channel and declined. But not for the reason that I expected. The small fan I requested didn't feature their branding, so they asked if I'd be interested in their 16-foot, top-of-the-line model instead. They even threw in some outdoor fans for my porch and an additional 2 units for my office. So I have 6 big-ass fans now. The installation was an adventure that took 2 electricians and myself an entire day. Instructions were actually quite amazing, and the hardest part was figuring out how to lift a 250-pound motor 18 feet in the air without injury. While Big Jose wasn't looking, we borrowed his scissor lift and lifted the motor into position within 1/8 of an inch of matching up the mounting holes that Jose drilled in his custom mounting plate he welded up. I definitely needed the pros to do all of this work for me. There's no way I could do it. Despite it being 30 degrees outside during the winter installation, I couldn't resist testing this beast out immediately. And even the porch fans and the office fans were amazingly quiet and powerful and stable. No balancing right out of the box, just perfect. We ran a naming contest on Instagram for the main fan, which generated tons of creative suggestions. And for some inexplicable reason, Cheeks made me laugh the hardest. So allow me to introduce you to my big ass fan named Cheeks, the newest and most impressive addition to my workshop. A lot of people ask if I'm worried about sawdust flying around, and the answer is no. Number one, I have really good dust collection and dust extraction, and so we try to get most of it at the source. And B, we rarely turn on the fan more than 10%. The plan is to put 2 24K Mr. Cool units on the wall blowing into the fan, and then have these 16-foot blades spread the cool air around on a low setting. This is Travis. He's a longtime friend and the owner of a company called Petra Coatings. They do professional resinous flooring for airports, car dealerships, Lamborghini showrooms, ESD or conductive floors for static control, warehouses, you name it. They have a residential arm too in case you're interested, and they know a lot about epoxy floors. I was planning on getting an epoxy flooring kit from the Orange store and doing it myself, and so I reached out to Travis to get some tips and tricks so I don't go to school on the first one. And like a true friend, Travis said, no. I'm not gonna let you do that. How about I come and show you how the pros do it, and you can show all your viewers some cool tips and tricks that only the pros know. I learned a lot watching his crew install this floor, and there are some really important things that you should know if you're ever gonna tackle this project by yourself, or even if you're gonna hire someone to do it. You can kind of gauge on how good they are. Most of the things I'm gonna show you, I had no idea about, and I would have been in deep trouble if I attempted this for the first time myself. Now I hate this, but it's true. Prep work is everything. It's important and mysterious work. Now, physical and mechanical scarification is greater than chemical prep. Since the physical prep looks like a lot of work, I would have gone the chemical route if I was doing this myself, which is doable, but you're gonna get a much better finished product if you mechanically open up the concrete. Now, I've always heard this from watching YouTube videos, but it wasn't until I saw it with my own eyes in person that I understood why mechanical prep is superior. Now, Petra has the coolest floor grinder I've ever seen. It uses diamond impregnated metal tooling that I think are like 40 grit, and they slide in on the bottom plate, and it even runs on propane. So in case there's not power at the job site, they can still do their job. They also have this propane powered dust extractor, and I was surprised at how effective it was. Virtually no concrete dust, which is super important. This prep exposed a lot of holes in the concrete surface and some small shrinkage cracks that were hiding under the surface, and this is the point of all of this work. They then mixed up some patching compound and patched all the cracks that they exposed so that the floor would be flat. The patch compound dried pretty quickly, and they wasted no time mixing up a base coat of Petra's Moisture Vapor Primer to lay down, or MVP as they call it. Now this is needed on some new slabs that still have high moisture content, or any slab that does not have a plastic vapor barrier underneath it. There was this one guy whose only job was to mix up the correct ratio of epoxy at certain times to provide the applicators with what they needed and when they needed it. And I saw this cool trick that he did. After he makes the first batch, he inserts a screw to the fill line on the side of the bucket, and then from that point on, he knows how to mix up the same amount so that everything is consistent. Seeing the free tricks of the trade like this one is one of my favorite things about watching pros do their thing on my job site. The next day they came back and showed me these spots. They call them fish eyes. And basically, something was on the concrete that was incompatible with the epoxy, causing the epoxy to separate. This could have been grease from the metal building materials, silicone from caulking, or some oil residue from anything else. They knew exactly what it was, what caused it, and how to deal with it, and I would have not known anything about that and thought I messed something up. They ground up that area, patched again, taking care of the issue like it was no big deal. I would have been stressing out. Shortly after, they applied a second coat of epoxy that they could broadcast flakes into. I hate most epoxy floors that are flaked. When Travis and I first started talking about doing a floor, I told him I didn't want it to look like an ugly epoxy floor. So this is what he proposed. Instead of using a standard flake, we could use a hybrid flake that varied in size and shades. He showed me a sample called Gemstone, and I was immediately sold. The end result should look more natural and organic and less man-made. Flaking is easy and pretty straightforward. You just need a certified butt ton of flakes and a generous throw. Don't skimp. They call it broadcasting to refusal, and it's one of the things I hate about cheap epoxy floors, where there's like maybe 5 flakes per square foot. Broadcasting to refusal is definitely the way to go. The next day, Petra came back and used this scraper tool to scrape up all the loose flakes that had no contact with the epoxy base coat. And then came the final coat. They used a polyaspartic top coat for UV stability, which I knew nothing about. And since I was concerned with it being slippery with sawdust or if it got wet, they put 4 ounces of this special grit in the top coat for every gallon of polyaspartic. And the idea here was to give it just a little bit of grit, and I totally love it. I tested it with sawdust and with water, and there's no slippage. If you're gonna do a floor, this is what you should do. Now this polyaspartic stuff is nasty. So nasty, they wouldn't even let me in the room when applying it, so I just hooked my camera onto one of their tools and got these really cool shots. And you could basically stop there, but since I was documenting it, and Travis is the go the extra mile kind of guy, they showed me an extra thing that you can do if you wanted to take the floor to the next level. They came back the next day, took a mesh floor sander and lightly sanded the top coat. They then added a second layer of polyaspartic to the entire thing again. Again, not required, and most people wouldn't do this, and it's totally optional. But building up to a second coat like this creates a stronger top coat that will be more durable and stand up to more use. Honestly, it's probably overkill for my use case, but it was cool to see this extra step and that there's more science and chemistry behind just buy a 2-part kit from Home Depot. I'll jump you forward in the future just a bit to show you what the finished floor looks like when I'm shooting a video with my David Copperfield lighting. What do you think? Personally, it's exactly what I was going for. I wanted something subtle and natural that looked good in the background of a video but didn't stand out. To me, it kind of looks like a huge granite slab. Now, if you're in the DFW area and you want Travis to upgrade your flooring in your garage, shop, patio, or your business or your warehouse or whatever, or even if you want to buy their own epoxy products and do it yourself, I'll leave his info in the description. I'm not sure I'm supposed to tell you this, but they secretly white label a lot of the higher end epoxy products for some global brands that you'd recognize if I said their name. So if you want the best and want to cut out the middleman, Petra is your secret source. You're welcome. From day one, the vision was clear. Line every wall with 3/4 inch plywood from the floor to the 12-foot mark. Now, lesser YouTubers would build a shop and use drywall instead because they're monsters. Nod, Travis, like you agree. Now, this being my first metal building, I quickly realized I didn't have a clear plan for how to attach the plywood to the metal frame. Big Jose knew this was my plan all along, so he added some extra horizontal supports I could screw into, which was a smart move, but I needed more vertical supports to screw into so that the plywood wouldn't potentially warp over time. I really didn't want to do this, but I ended up installing a lot of 2x4 studs every 24 inches. Now, I'm sure there's a better solution here, but this is what I came up with in the moment. One of the most powerful books I've read recently is Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. For almost all of my life, I've been in the situation of if I wanted something, I was going to have to do it myself because I couldn't afford to have someone else do it. But in the last few years, my business has grown to the point of my time and attention being the most valuable it ever has been in my life. My new problem is that my mindset has still been stuck in, I want to save as much money as possible, so I'll do it myself. Dan's book really opened my eyes to see truly what my hourly rate is, what he calls your buyback rate, and how this mindset that I've been holding on to was not only costing me more money than I realized, but it wasn't serving me anymore. In full transparency, it still would have been cheaper if I hired someone out to do all this plywood work for me, but I didn't want to do that. I actually enjoy the low stakes, low stress work of building out stud walls and screwing plywood in. Now while it was tedious to measure and mark out all the penetrations needed, it was delightful to have all the boxes and holes I cut out line up exactly where they needed to be. Plus, by doing it myself, I'll have this institutional memory of where things are so that in the future, when I'm installing tools or French cleats to the wall, I'll be more equipped. One surprising thing that happened was every time a contractor came back to check on my progress, they were blown away with how nice the plywood walls looked. Then they'd confess that when I first started talking about lining the walls with plywood, they all assumed I'd be using OSB or something cheaper. 3 different contractors assumed this, and it's kind of funny how expectations can be. All in all, in this section alone, I had to buy 120 sheets of plywood. Now, I got a good deal, but still at $35 each. These walls cost me $4,200 bucks, but at least I don't have sheetrock like you know who. I need this workshop to be a cold harbor during the Texas summers, and that's why I partnered with Mr. Cool to add cooling in my shop and heating in the winter. Since they don't make a single zone 48K unit, I'm going to cheat and install a multi-zone system, and instead of using it in 2 different places, I'll install 2 24K air handlers to cool down or heat up the main workshop area depending on the season. My plan from the beginning was to mount both of these units on this wall about 10 feet in the air, pointed straight at cheeks. Now what's amazing is how whisper quiet these units are. Even when running at full power, I can still record videos without any background noise interference. The key is mounting this to an exterior wall so that you can allow gravity to handle your condensate line. We intentionally screwed our plywood walls in instead of nailing so that we can remove panels if we need access to the walls in the future for any reason. The units come with this template and it makes mounting and positioning foolproof. It also helped me visually see where these units were going to be before committing to their placement. Using a hole saw, I created a hole in the wall for the line set, control lines, and condensate lines to exit the unit. This hole is marked on the template and is completely hidden when the unit is installed. I love power tools. We removed a few wall panels so that we could drill more holes in the purlin to run the line sets through. Now most people won't need to do this, as you just run the lines on the outside of your structure and coil up any excess on the outside behind your condenser unit like a normal person. But since I could open up the walls easily, I thought it would look cleaner to put the coiled up extra length inside the wall instead of outside the wall. Running the lines is straightforward and easy. You just need to make sure you don't aggressively bend the copper line sets. The wall unit easily clips onto the wall mounting plate, and for a guy who's not an HVAC technician, this was fun and satisfying. The easy way to make a pad for the condenser to sit on is just to buy a plastic or hollow one from Amazon. But I strangely enjoy concrete work and I wanted a better look, so I opted to make my own concrete pads. Now when I started this channel, I used to do mostly tool reviews, and I'd always get comments from people saying, do you even build anything, or are all those tools just set decorations? And that's fair because I didn't show myself building a lot on the channel. I'm not proud of it, but a big part of me choosing to make my own concrete pads was just to show all you trolls that I do, in fact, know how to make stuff. I tricked Seth, my product designer, again and had him create a profile adapter for the outside line guard cover that Mr. Cool sent me. And since it's on the south facing wall, I used PA6GF filament, which is really strong and has a insanely high heat tolerance. I used Bamboo's high temperature filament dryer to dry the roll for 8 hours before I printed it, and then I printed it on the huge bed of their new H2D printer, and I actually needed all of the space that it had. Installing a Mr. Cool unit is not hard, but the hardest part for me was building up the emotional courage to commit and drill a 3.5-inch hole into the outside of my brand new building. Twice. Now I've obsessed over the optics and design of this entire building, and I was afraid of drilling the wrong hole in the wrong place. But I just committed, measured about 15 times, took a few deep breaths, and it was fine. Later I put some silicone over on the top and the sides of this line guard cover just to make sure no water creeps in. We gently uncoiled the line set to the length we needed and made the connections with a crescent wrench. And the secret to Mr. Cool's system is these patented line sets. They have the refrigerant pre-charged, and you don't need any certification, vacuum pumps, gauges, or coolant. Once you hook it up to the condenser, you open the valves and all the refrigerant fills the system and you can hear it. It's pretty cool. I turned it on, checked for leaks with soapy water, and since there were no leaks, we wrapped up the connections with some sound dampeners and buttoned everything up. We added this USB Wi-Fi device, which enables me to control the wall handlers via my smartphone, and each unit came with a remote. And what's cool is that if I point one remote at both units, they both respond. So I can control both 24K units as if they were a single 48K unit. And in the app, I made a group for the workshop, which allows me to turn the group on or off at the same time and operate these units as one. What really impresses me is how quickly these units cool down my shop. At the time of this recording, at the end of March, we're already hitting 90-degree days, and these units cool down the shop in about 10 minutes flat. Now, last summer, my Mr. Cool unit in my garage would take the temperature from a sweltering 100 degrees inside the garage to a comfortable 75 in about 15 minutes, which is crazy. And I suspect this 48K setup to be even faster. I also figured out that once we've cooled the shop, we can put the units in dry mode, which just pulls the moisture out of the air, and the workshop remains comfortable. This is a game changer for efficiency while still keeping the humidity at bay in my huge shop. I've had at least 3 contractors come by and ask me about this setup when they saw me installing it, and they asked if it was easy to install, and I'm not sure if I should be offended or not, but when I tell them that I installed the one in my garage and I installed these 2, they laugh and say, oh, then it must be really easy. Then they pull out their smartphone to look up Mr. Cool's website. And honestly, if I can install them, you can totally install them. Get comfortable today at MrCoolDIY.com. For those who watched the last episode and had a keen eye on our dirt, you probably noticed that we fought erosion every time it rained. You can see the channels the rain would carve in this shot right here. So unfortunately, that meant we had to add a few pallets of sod to control that. I was going to do it myself, as I can get a pallet of grass for about $250 if I pick it up, but when I was quoted $300 a pallet, delivered and installed, yeah, remember when I said sometimes it's cheaper just to pay the pros? Yeah, I'd gladly pay $50 extra a pallet to have it delivered and installed and not break a sweat. This is probably one of the last times the skid steer was going to visit our job site, which made the supervisor kind of sad. So he took off on his own private skid steer to go find a juice box to drown his sorrows in. A few pallets actually means 18, and it took the guys all day to install it. It cost $5,400 and another $2,700 to add 4 zones to our irrigation to water it. There's one thing that's been bothering me on the inside of the workshop, and it's these ugly windows. So here's what I did, and it was super cheap. I bought some paint grade beach that was straight line ripped on one side. This means it was up to me to determine the final width, which I was happy to do. This stuff is about $2.25 a board foot where I live, which is stupid cheap. Off camera, I made a simple box using some thick and quick glue and brad nails, nothing fancy, and then I secured the box in the window opening with wood to metal self-tapping screws. Then I ripped down a bunch of beach to 3.5 inches, and I used my Craig Foreman to speed through a bunch of pocket holes. We made a bunch of super simple frames on the floor that were about 3/8 of an inch larger all the way around for a nice reveal, and then just brad nailed them in place, nothing fancy. I've never trimmed windows like this, and it was the wonderful Keith Johnson who gave me this idea, so thanks, Jerry. Each window here costs $23.20 to trim out, and I think that's pretty good. We put together some ready to assemble Craig benches for the assembly line wall for our business, and then much to my wife's delight, we brought my 3D print farm out of the laundry room and out of the closet and into its new home. We first started this project 10 months ago. We're moved in right now, but we are far from done. You want a quick tour? The shop is 2,000 square feet, and this wall over here is dedicated entirely to the product side of our business. I have 11 P1S printers that run about 16 hours a day. In true story, they were in my master closet and laundry room for the last year and a half. Here's where orders come in, and I have this cool counter that in real time shows us when a new order comes in. We just put this whiteboard up to keep track of the most important things in our business. What's really cool is when we print a shipping label, we can just walk it down these Craig benches that we put together, and it's really helped our efficiency and in reducing errors when shipping things. We make all of our stuff here in the United States, and right here, we're working on the 6th run of our trim router plates with our special trim vac attachment. We organize all of our track saw upgrade accessories right here, which is really nice to be able to see them all in one glance. And this machine right here is so cool. With the press of a button, it gives us the perfect length of a custom tape that we had made that's already wet, and we just put it on the box. Over here, we're testing out a new product that's going to be releasing soon called the Wit Grip, which holds a domino vertically. This other side of the shop is what you'll see most of the time. All of the power tools and dust collection will be on this wall because we have 6 220 plugs dedicated on there. We got dual mini splits 10 feet up on the wall, sending cold air into cheeks. And because we're on a well, we had to put in a water softener and a water filter, which kind of sucked, but it is what it is. In a future video, I'm going to show you how we built this bathroom, how we hid the water heater, how to put a urinal in, and how to build a very, very cool vanity out of walnut and concrete. We just put a motor on the roll-up door, and I like it, but if I had to do this all over again, I would choose a different style door. One, it doesn't have insulation, and in the summertime, we're really gonna feel the heat. And two, on a windy day, it's really noisy. This back wall will soon get plywood all the way to the ceiling, so you won't be able to see into my secret office. And I've got a really cool video coming up where I show you how to build the coolest door I've ever seen in a shop. Before I show you one last trick that I'm really excited about, if you caught all the Easter eggs that I sprinkled throughout this video, make sure you leave a comment and let me know, because one of you is going to win a waffle party. If you've ever tried to film yourself making a video, you know how that process is slow and takes the life out of both works of art. One benefit to building a shop like this was to reduce as much friction as possible, so I made my studio lights smart. Check this out. Alexa, studio lights. Imagine a musical dance experience with a marching band here.